The distress signal tore through space like a scream in the dark. On the peaceful world of Relani Prime, smoke rose from burning cities while alien warships circled overhead like vultures. The Relani had always been a gentle people, more interested in growing crystals and studying the stars than building weapons. Now they were paying the price for their trust in galactic peace. Captain, Mike Thompson was reviewing supply reports aboard the Iron Will when the emergency beacon hit his communications array. The message was broken, filled with static, but the desperation came through clearly. Relani voices pleaded for anyone at all, to help them. Their world was burning. Their people were being taken. The Krex Syndicate had struck without warning. These weren't soldiers fighting for honor or territory. They were slavers and pirates who saw entire worlds as nothing more than resources to harvest. They would strip Relani Prime bare, take every useful person as slaves, and leave the rest to die among the ruins. While the message reached human space, it also arrived at the Galactic Assembly headquarters on Nexus Station. Assembly was supposed to keep peace in this part of the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in comfortable chambers debating what to do. Some worried about legal procedures. Others questioned whether they had the right to interfere. A few suggested forming a committee to study the situation. Hours passed. The debates continued. Forms needed to be filed. Proper channels had to be followed. The assembly moved slowly. It's like a giant machine that took forever to start up, but humans don't work that way. Thompson grabbed his communicator and punched in Admiral Jack Roberts' priority code. The connection took 3 minutes to establish. Across the void of space, "Jack, we've got a situation," Thompson said, without bothering with formal greetings. "The Relani are getting hit hard by slavers. They need help now." Roberts didn't ask about paperwork or authorization. He asked about ship positions and travel times. Within minutes, he was sending coded messages to every human vessel within range. Military ships, cargo haulers, even civilian transports got the same message. Innocent people needed help, and help was coming. Lieutenant Amy Davis watched her captain with growing concern. She was young, fresh from the academy, and still believed the system worked the way it was supposed to. "Sir, shouldn't we wait for the assembly? They handle these situations." Thompson looked at the tactical display showing Relani space. Red warning markers indicated Krex ships, dozens of them, surrounding the helpless world. "Amy, how long do you think those people have while the assembly makes up its mind?" "The procedures exist for good reasons, sir. To prevent conflicts from spreading." "And what about preventing people from being enslaved?" Thompson's voice carried years of frustration with galactic bureaucracy. "Look at that display. See those red dots? Each one represents a ship full of raiders who won't hesitate to kill anyone who gets in their way." Amy pulled up the latest intelligence reports on her screen. The Krex Syndicate had hit 12 worlds in the past 2 years. Each time the assembly had debated until it was too late to matter. Entire populations had vanished into the black market. Slave trade. While representatives argued about jurisdiction, Thompson's communicator buzzed with incoming messages. Captain Bill Harrison from the cargo hauler Steadfast was changing course, even though his ship wasn't designed for combat. Commander Kate Willis aboard the destroyer Relentless reported she could be there in 36 hours. Even civilian captain Tom Bradley on the transport New Hope was volunteering, though his ship carried nothing more dangerous than mining equipment. "This is what humans do," Thompson told his lieutenant. "We don't wait for permission to do the right thing. While other species debate and form committees, people die. The Relani sent out a cry for help, and we're going to answer it." The Iron Will turned toward Relani's space, its engines pushing toward maximum speed. Behind it, dozens of other ships made the same turn. They came from different backgrounds, different jobs, different worlds in human space. But they shared something that made them uniquely dangerous to anyone who preyed on the innocent. They couldn't stand by and watch others suffer. The human fleet looked nothing like what the galaxy expected from a rescue force. Most species built their ships sleek and clean, with perfect paint jobs and matching designs. The humans who answered the Relani distress call brought whatever they could get their hands on. Commander Lisa Parker stood on the bridge of her ship, the Lucky Strike. 3 months ago, it had been hauling grain between Earth colonies. Now, it bristled with missile pods welded to the cargo bay doors and railguns mounted where loading cranes used to be. The ship's hull still bore the faded logo of Peterson Shipping Company under hastily applied military gray paint around her. The strangest fleet in galactic history, prepared for battle. Captain Joe Martinez had turned his deep space mining vessel into a weapons platform by mounting industrial lasers. Meant for cutting asteroids, the civilian transport Prairie Wind now carried marine boarding teams instead of passengers. It's Captain Beth Collins having volunteered her ship without hesitation. Even stranger was the Roughneck, captained by an old cargo hauler named Danny Foster. His ship was held together with spare parts and stubborn determination, but it carried enough improvised explosives to level a city block. Foster had been running supplies to frontier worlds when the call came in. He dumped his cargo of farming equipment and loaded up with everything that could make a big boom. "Control, this is Parker." Lisa spoke into her headset. "I've got 43 ships ready to jump. We're not pretty, but we're angry." Admiral Jack Roberts' voice crackled back. "Across the void. Copy that, Parker. Remember, these Kreks think they're dealing with another soft target. They've been bullying peaceful species for years. Time to show them what happens when they mess with someone who fights back." The human ships were proof that Earth was what the galaxy called a death world. Most inhabited planets were gentle places where evolution had been kind. Humans came from a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years. It fought ice ages, predators, diseases, and each other. It had made them tough, creative, and absolutely unwilling to give up when things looked impossible. This showed in their ships. While other species built vessels for specific purposes, humans built things that could be changed, modified, and repurposed on the fly. A cargo ship could become a weapons platform overnight. A mining vessel could turn into a fortress. A passenger transport could carry an entire army. The jump to Relani space took 18 minutes. When the human fleet dropped back into normal space, they found exactly what they'd expected. Krek ships surrounded the planet like a pack of wolves around wounded prey. The alien vessels were designed to intimidate all sharp angles and threatening weapon arrays. They'd been built to make peaceful species surrender without a fight. But the Relani had been fighting for 3 days straight. Their small defense fleet was down to 6 ships, and those were barely holding together. Captain Nelvin of the Relani Defense Corps couldn't believe his sensors when the human fleet appeared. 43 ships, all broadcasting human identification codes. "Unknown vessels. This is Relani Defense Control," Nelvin transmitted, his crystalline voice shaking with exhaustion and hope. "Are you here to help?" The response came immediately, broadcast on every frequency so everyone in the system could hear it. Captain Thompson's voice was calm but carried the promise of a storm. "This is the Terran Relief Fleet. Any Relani forces fall back to safe positions. We'll handle it from here." The Krek's fleet commander, Warlord Vexstar, couldn't hide his amusement. These new ships looked like junk held together with paint and prayer. His sleek Predator vessels had weapons designed to crush military fleets. What could a bunch of converted freighters possibly do against his superior firepower? He was about to find out why the rest of the galaxy had learned to fear the species from the little blue world at the edge of nowhere. The Kreks had fought dozens of species across the galaxy, and every battle had followed the same pattern. 2 fleets would line up facing each other, exchange fire until one side's shields failed. Then the losers would surrender or retreat. It was civilized, predictable warfare that the Kreks had mastered through superior technology and numbers. The humans threw that playbook out the window in the first 5 minutes. Instead of forming a battle line, the human ships scattered like leaves in a hurricane. They dove into the asteroid field that ringed Relani space, using the floating rocks as cover and launching points for hit-and-run attacks. The Kreks found themselves chasing shadows, firing at targets that vanished behind asteroids only to reappear somewhere else entirely. Captain Tom Wilson was leading one of the craziest operations anyone had ever attempted. His target was a Kreks, command ship sitting in the middle of a radiation field that would cook most organic life in minutes. The ship's captain thought he was perfectly safe there, protected by deadly energy that would kill any boarding party. He hadn't counted on humans. Wilson's team wore mining suits that had been modified in the past. 6 hours, engineer Bobby Chen had stripped radiation shielding from 3 different ships and cobbled together protection that might, maybe, keep them alive long enough to complete their mission. "Remember, boys," Wilson said, as their small assault craft approached the enemy vessel. "These Kreks have been picking on peaceful folks for decades. Species that never learned to fight dirty, never had to survive on a world that wanted them dead. By the time they met some real Deathworlders." His boarding team was made up of former miners, construction workers, and soldiers who'd volunteered for what everyone knew was probably a suicide mission. They weren't elite special forces. They were ordinary humans who couldn't stand watching. Bullies hurt innocent people. The assault craft punched through the Krek's hull like a drill through soft metal. Wilson's team poured into the enemy ship, their improvised armor smoking from radiation exposure, but still holding together. The Krek's crew couldn't believe what they were seeing. No species could survive in that radiation field, yet here were these crazy humans cutting through bulkheads and fighting their way toward the bridge. Meanwhile, across the battlefield, engineer Kate Martinez was proving that humans could turn anything into a weapon. She'd been studying captured Krek's technology for all of 2 hours when she figured out a fatal flaw in their shield systems. It's beautiful in its simplicity. She radioed to the fleet while rewiring a civilian power core. These Krek shields are designed to handle military-grade weapons. They automatically adjust to counter whatever's hitting them. But if you hit them with something completely unexpected, she connected her improvised device to the Lucky Strike's main power grid and fired it at the nearest Krek's destroyer. The alien ship's shields, confused by the chaotic energy signature, tried to adapt to 12 different types of attack at once. System overloaded spectacularly, leaving the destroyer completely defenseless. "It's not pretty," Martinez continued. "Already working on her next modification, but it works. Sending the technical specs to everyone now. Any ship with a civilian power core can build one of these in about 20 minutes. Within an hour, half the human fleet was firing jury-rigged weapons that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. Cargo. Ships were using modified tractor beams to tear chunks off enemy vessels. Mining ships were firing clouds of metal debris that punched through Kreks. Armor like shotgun blasts. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to play by the rules. When a human ship's weapons failed, the crew would ram their target or use their ship's industrial equipment as weapons. When conventional tactics didn't work, they'd try something nobody had ever thought of before. Captain Foster on the Roughneck actually managed to disable a Krek's cruiser by dumping his entire cargo hold of mining explosives right into the enemies. Engine intake. The explosion nearly took out his own ship too, but Foster just laughed and looked for his next target. The Krek's had superior technology, better armor, and more powerful weapons. But they'd never fought anyone who treated impossible. Odds is just another problem to solve. 18 hours into the battle, something remarkable happened. The R'Lani, who had been hiding in underground bunkers while their world burned above, started to emerge. They'd been watching the humans fight through their communication networks. Seeing these strange aliens from Earth risk everything for people they'd never met, it changed them. Captain Nelvin was the first to break from the shelter protocols. His damaged ship limped out of its hiding place behind R'Lani Prime's largest moon, broadcasting to any human vessel that would listen. "This is R'Lani Defense Corps. We're coming to help." The sight of R'Lani ships joining the fight had an electric effect on both sides. The humans, who'd been fighting alone against overwhelming odds, suddenly had local allies who knew the system better than anyone. The Kreks, who thought they were dealing with a small human force, realized they now faced an entire world that had decided to fight back. Dr. Rachel Green had been working non-stop in the medical bay of the Prairie Wind, treating wounded from both sides of the conflict. But when R'Lani scientists contacted her ship, she found herself in the middle of the most important collaboration of her life. Your crystal technology, she told the R'Lani scientist through a hastily arranged video link. It can focus and amplify energy in ways we've never seen. What if we could use that against their communication systems? The R'Lani, whose entire culture was built around harmony and peaceful cooperation, had never thought of their crystals as weapons. Watching humans fight so desperately for their freedom had opened their minds to new possibilities. Working together, Rachel and the R'Lani team created something neither species could have managed alone. They grew specialized crystals that could intercept and scramble Krek's military communications, turning the aliens' coordination advantage into chaos. Within hours, every major Krek's formation found itself cut off from Central Command, their ships. Fighting as isolated units instead of a coordinated fleet, the effect was devastating. Krek's tactics depended on precise coordination between different ship classes. When their communications went dark, their carefully planned attacks fell apart. Destroyers found themselves without fighter support. Command ships lost contact with their scout vessels. The disciplined alien fleet became a collection of confused ships, each fighting its own separate battle. Warlord Vexstar, commanding the Krek's forces from his flagship, couldn't understand what was happening. His advanced fleet was being torn apart by what looked like a collection of modified civilian ships and crystal-wielding farmers. In desperation, he opened a channel to broadcast across the entire system. "This is impossible," his voice carried. The rage and confusion of a predator who'd discovered his prey could fight back. "You're just primitives from a backwater world. Your ships are held together with scrap metal and hope." The response came immediately from Admiral Jack Roberts aboard his command ship. His voice was calm, steady, and carried across every frequency in the system. "Primitive? Maybe. But we're primitives who don't abandon our neighbors. We're primitives who know how to turn scrap metal into something that hits back." Those words became a rallying cry. Every human ship in the fleet, from the mighty destroyer, relentless to the converted cargo hauler New Hope, seemed to fight with renewed determination. The R'Lani, hearing this promise that they wouldn't be abandoned, threw themselves into the battle with everything they had. The final engagement began at dawn on R'Lani Prime and lasted only 3 hours. The remaining Krek's forces, cut off from each other and facing an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with every setback, made a desperate attempt to break through to open space. They ran into Sergeant Dan Murphy. Murphy had been leading boarding parties for the past 12 hours, and his team had gotten creative, working with R'Lani engineers. They'd figured out how to modify mining equipment into breaching tools that could cut through Krek's armor like butter. His soldiers were riding R'Lani crystal miners, machines designed to tunnel through solid rock straight through enemy hull plating. That's right, you run. Murphy shouted over the cum as another Krek ship tried to flee, only to find itself boarded by humans who'd turned mining gear into assault vehicles. Should have picked on someone your own size. The retreat became a rout. Those Krek ships that could still move fled toward the edge of the system, leaving behind nearly half their fleet either captured or destroyed. 2 days after the last Krek ship fled into deep space, the Galactic Assembly finally arrived. Their pristine white vessels dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, sensors scanning for the massive battle they expected to find still raging. Instead, they discovered something that shocked them to their core. The Krek's threat was gone, completely eliminated. But what really surprised the Assembly representatives wasn't the victory, was what came after. Instead of celebrating or demanding payment for their services, the humans were working. Side by side with the R'Lani, they were already rebuilding damaged cities, sharing technology, treating their former clients as equals. Ambassador Helen Clark stood in the rebuilt R'Lani council chambers, sleeves rolled up in her diplomatic uniform stained with construction dust. She'd been working for 18 hours straight alongside R'Lani engineers, helping design new defense systems that combined human military knowledge with R'Lani crystal technology. "Look good," she was saying to Prime Minister Veltar when her aide rushed in with news of the Assembly fleet's arrival. "We can have the first orbital defense platforms online within 6 months." Veltar's crystalline features caught the light as he nodded. His people had changed during the crisis. The peaceful species that had never known war was learning that. Sometimes you had to be ready to fight to protect what you valued, and the Mutual Defense Pact. Already drafted, Helen replied, pulling up a holographic document. Any threat to Relani space gets an immediate human response. Any threat to human space gets Relani support. Stronger together than apart. That's when the assembly delegation arrived, led by military coordinator Zethrin, a being from a species that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a bureaucrat. His forearms carried data tablets filled with complaints and legal citations. Ambassador Clark, Zethrin's translator, made his chittering sound coldly official. The humans acted without assembly authorization. This intervention violated at least 12 interstellar treaties and could have started a major war. Helen turned to face the alien official, her expression calm, but her eyes holding the steel that had carried humanity to the stars. Military coordinator, with respect. Where exactly were you 3 days ago when innocent people were being murdered and enslaved? Prime Minister Veltar stepped forward, his entire demeanor transformed from the frightened leader who'd sent the original distress call. They acted when you would not. Coordinator. While your assembly debated and filed paperwork, these humans crossed the galaxy to help strangers. The Relani leader's voice carried new strength. The kind that comes from surviving something terrible and discovering you're tougher than you thought. We formally request that humanity be granted full assembly membership, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Zetherin's mandibles clicked in what his species considered laughter. Impossible. Humans are too primitive, too violent. They don't understand civilized negotiation. Civilized? Voltara's crystalline body actually seemed to glow with anger. Was it civilized to let my people suffer while you held committee meetings? These primitive humans showed more civilization in one day than your assembly has in years. Captain Thompson had just finished supervising the loading of Krex prisoners onto transport ships when he heard about the assembly's arrival. His uniform still bore scorch marks from boarding actions, and he smelled like smoke and engine coolant. He looked exactly like what he was, a fighting man who'd just finished a hard job, when reporters asked him about the human fleet's rapid response to the crisis. Thompson shrugged like it was the most natural thing in the world. We got 17. More distress calls this week alone. Colony ships under pirate attack, mining stations being raided, peaceful worlds threatened by warlords. With or without assembly permission, we're going to answer them. The statement sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Other species had always assumed that major military actions required months of planning, committee approvals, and diplomatic clearances. The idea that an entire species would simply respond to cries for help, regardless of bureaucratic approval, was revolutionary. As the human fleet began to disperse, each ship heading toward different crisis zones across the galaxy, something fundamental had changed. The Relani weren't the only ones taking notice. Across dozens of worlds, species that had felt helpless against raiders and slavers were looking toward the small blue planet at the edge of known space. They were starting to understand that the species from Earth didn't just fight differently than everyone else. They cared differently. When humans heard someone crying for help, they didn't form committees or debate jurisdiction. They loaded up their ships and went to help, because that's what neighbors do for each other, and in a galaxy full of bureaucracy and careful neutrality that made all the difference.